Welcome to today's explainer. Look, if you're an executive sitting in the C-suite right now, you are likely staring down what's honestly one of the most complex corporate dilemmas of the decade. We're talking about balancing this massive, virtually insatiable demand for AI capabilities across your workforce with the absolute non-negotiable necessity of corporate data security and long-term financial ROI. It's a tricky high-wire act, right? So today, we're going to break down exactly how this market is shifting right under our feet. To really understand where we're headed, we've got to look at the sheer scale of the expectations out there. Wall Street is currently gearing up to value frontier AI labs, think OpenAI and Anthropic, at a combined $800 billion. That is a staggering number, and it's built on a very specific premise: the assumption that these tech giants have massive, long-term enterprise pricing power. Investors are betting big that they're the next Microsoft or Google, protected by an unshakable moat. But well, that moat might not be nearly as deep as everyone thought. Okay, let's dive into this, because the math here is truly eye-opening. Imagine your company has a $10 million AI budget. If you run your enterprise operations on Anthropic's top model, Claude Opus, you could easily burn through that entire budget in a matter of weeks. Seriously, weeks. But if you run that exact same workload on DeepSeek, a highly capable open-source model out of China, that same $10 million could stretch across most of the year. Independent benchmarkers have crunched the numbers, and they're showing that those frontier cloud costs can literally be 9 times higher than the cheapest Chinese alternatives doing the exact same work.
So, here is our quick roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the enterprise AI cost problem. Number 2, the open source disruption. 3, the security risks of foreign AI. 4, the private deployment imperative. And finally, we'll bring it all together with maximizing long-term ROI. All right, starting off with Section 1, the enterprise AI cost problem, the CapEx squeeze. Right now, enterprise CFOs are feeling an immense amount of pressure. We're transitioning away from that era of just a few fun experimental AI pilot projects, and we're actively rolling out AI across entire global workforces. And let me tell you, at that production scale, the price tag completely changes the buying equation. It forces the ultimate executive dilemma. Are we trading corporate security for cheaper compute? When internal demand is insatiable but budgets are finite, the temptation to just switch to those highly performant, incredibly cheap offshore open source models is massive. But leadership has to ask if they're unknowingly compromising their security perimeter just to save a few bucks on the cloud bill. Which leads us straight into Section 2, the open source disruption and the broader market shift. Now, what's really interesting here is that the pricing power that justified those massive $800 billion valuations for the frontier labs, it's actively cracking, and it's happening fast. Consider the numbers coming out of OpenRouter, the largest AI traffic aggregator. Back in 2024, Chinese open source models accounted for just 1% of usage, 1%. But this year, that has exploded to over 40%. In fact, 3 of the top 5 models being used right now are Chinese. Adoption is aggressively following the lowest price, and for the first time ever, overall download volumes for open models from Chinese providers have actually surpassed American providers. Now, you might be wondering, how on earth did these foreign labs get so incredibly efficient? Well, constraint became their strategy. Because Chinese labs were totally cut off from NVIDIA's most powerful chips due to export restrictions, they simply couldn't just throw raw compute power at the problem. They had absolutely no choice but to get creative. This forced algorithmic creativity resulted in smaller models, vastly cheaper training runs, and highly efficient inference. Labs like DeepSeek and Moonshot have literally shipped open-source models that match, or very nearly match, American frontier models on the benchmarks that actually matter to businesses. Let's move to Section 3, security risks of foreign AI, and those hidden costs you really need to be aware of. So, while the upfront cost of these foreign models looks incredibly appealing, the hidden costs could be absolutely catastrophic for an enterprise. At what cost comes cheap compute? I mean, if you're a lean startup just doing some basic, low-sensitivity text summarization, you might be totally fine absorbing the risks associated with a cheap foreign model. But what if you're a major bank, or a telecom provider, or a power grid operator? Enterprise executives simply cannot afford the hidden cybersecurity risks attached to that massive discount. Let's get specific about the actual vulnerabilities we're talking about here. As large language models increasingly start replacing human software engineering teams, the origin of that model matters immensely. If you rely on foreign AI to write your corporate code, you face a severe risk of subtle, basically undetectable vulnerabilities being introduced directly into your software base. We're talking about potential backdoors, third-party access exploits, and the literal exposure of critical economic infrastructure. We know for a fact these massive models are capable of highly sophisticated cyber offense and defense.
So handing the keys to your software stack to an unsecured foreign model, that is a massive unmanaged risk. And this brilliantly illustrates a stark dividing line in the AI market today. Over on one side, you have low-sensitivity workloads. Think startups with high risk tolerance who are just looking for low-cost optimization. But on the other side, you have high-trust workloads. Banks, grade operators, defense contractors, healthcare. These are heavily regulated industries with absolutely zero risk tolerance. They simply will not and frankly cannot touch foreign models no matter how cheap or performant they get. They absolutely require Western, democratically aligned technology.
Moving right along to Section 4, the private deployment imperative, securing the perimeter.
So if the public cloud and foreign open source models are just too risky for sensitive data, how do enterprises actually secure their perimeter? Well, the answer lies in air-gap deployments. This is a crucial security measure where a network is physically isolated from unsecured networks, like the public internet. It completely eliminates external cyber risk. Specialized enterprise AI builders like Cohere, for example, have recognized that moving too much sensitive corporate data up to the cloud is a huge mistake. Instead, they're offering these highly secure on-premise air-gap deployments directly inside the customer's own physical data center. I absolutely love this analogy from Aidan Gomez, the CEO of Cohere. He notes that their technology is designed so securely that you could literally deploy it into a submarine a kilometer under the surface of the ocean, with zero ability to talk to the outside internet, and the AI would still function perfectly. Now that is the level of absolute, uncompromising security that major enterprises require today. Executing this secure deployment protocol requires a very specific, deliberate approach. Step 1, you can't use those massive 10 trillion parameter models. Why? Because Step 2 requires deploying on an extremely limited footprint of just 2 to 4 GPUs. High-security on-premise facilities usually can't get their hands on thousands of scarce chips, so you need a right-sized, hyper-efficient model. And Step 3 is ensuring complete on-premise air-gapping. This technological constraint forces efficiency, but more importantly, it guarantees your data protection. Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, maximizing long-term ROI by balancing efficiency and trust. Ultimately, the CFO and the Chief Information Security Officer have to be on the exact same page here. What we're witnessing right now is a massive transition from the experimental phase into the optimization phase. Think about it. Over the last year, companies were totally in this AI at all costs mindset. We saw massive capex, heavy cloud reliance, and frankly, super bloated models. But now, the dust is settling. CFOs are looking at the massive expenses of production-scale AI and moving toward targeted capex, secure on-premise environments, and hyper-efficient, smaller models. That is how you balance long-term ROI with ironclad security. And the really good news? U.S. enterprises don't actually have to choose between a billion-dollar cloud bill and an unsecured foreign model. That gap for highly capable, highly secure, and cost-effective AI is actively being filled by democratically aligned providers. You have NVIDIA shipping its open-source Nematron models. You have well-funded startups like Reflection AI building American open-source alternatives. And you have platforms like Cohere doing custom, secure private deployments. These are platforms that major organizations already deeply trust. So the crucial point is really captured well by Aidan Gomez. The trust barrier to enterprise adoption continuously gets higher and higher. At the end of the day, trust is the ultimate currency. It's going to dictate all major enterprise AI purchasing decisions moving forward. It won't just be about who has the smartest algorithm. It will absolutely be about who can deploy that algorithm without putting the global economy or your company's proprietary data at risk. Which leaves us with this final provocative question to ask yourselves and your executive teams this week. Does your corporate AI roadmap trade long-term security for short-term savings? As you evaluate your AI spend against your long-term ROI, remember this one critical truth. The most expensive AI implementation isn't the one with the highest upfront licensing fee. No, it's the one that eventually gets breached. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this helps you navigate the incredibly complex, fascinating world of enterprise AI.